Hey y'all, it's Hope at Crafty Hope. Welcome. I'm about to work on, I think, the October 4-core challenge from Anna Salisbury. The 4-core ingredients this month are a theme of aware, beware, or danger, or a combination of those, just aware, beware, danger. In addition, let's see, number 2 is cracks or crackles, rips, broken, or damaged items. And then a crescent moon or half moon shape and spider. You have to include a spider somehow. Now that's the hardest one for me, y'all. I'm pretty highly arachnophobic. I don't care for images of spiders or yeah, I'm not a fan of spiders. So we're gonna play with that. So I want to tell you what I've got for aware beware danger. I do have these remnant rubs from Tim Holtz on it, which have the word beware on it, as well as like these little poison labels, which I think could be neat. It does have a couple spiders, but it gives me the willies, so I don't know if I'm going to use those. It does say spider webs, which plays into some of that. So I think I'm going to use that for my aware beware danger, is like alert and all of that. For crackles or cracks, rips, broken, or damaged, I will somehow, I think, adhere one of these onto some paper that maybe I rip and alter in some way. I'm thinking on that. For crescent or half moon, I've got these couple of crescent moon charms from Patina Queen. I've just ordered some more actually, because if I use one, I want more. So I've got those. I'm going to use, I think, one of those. And then for spider, as you saw, I've got the spiders on here, but my thought was I kind of like the idea of a spider web maybe in a jar. I don't want it on me or whatever, but so what I've gathered, y'all, these are like dandelion fluff. There's some big ones and some little ones in here. I put it in here so it doesn't blow away, but I'm thinking about taking it off the seeds there and putting it in a jar and making a necklace that I solder into a necklace with the crescent moon and all of that. So that's what I'm toying with right now. So I'm going to play around with this and hopefully I can get all 4 of these things to be cohesive, because like I said, I don't do spiders. And when I had the idea of a necklace, I really knew I didn't want to wear something with a spider. So yeah. So I'm going to play a little bit and we'll see where this goes. I'm going to move some of this. I think I'm going to use this jar, but I want to experiment with altering it, maybe with some alcohol inks first. So that's where I'm going to go. And that's where I started with a couple of Ranger alcohol inks, I believe in Slate and Mushroom. And I'm putting it in there, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you that this is a little jar from the Dollar Tree. And the alcohol inks do not want to stick to it. I have tried this before, I think, with my sister's assemblage I did for 4-core. I'll put a link to that up above. And you can see it coats the inside really neat, but it just doesn't stay. So I move it around, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I did 2 altered little jars. The second one, I cleaned the inside a little bit, wondering if there was like some kind of coating or something in it, and I just used a 50-50 mix of water and vinegar and a Q-tip to clean out the inside of the other jar. I don't know that it helped. What did help with the other one is that I left a lot of the liquid in there and let it sit on its side. Now here I add a little bit of ginger in as well. And the second jar, I use all 3 of these colors as well, just to kind of, I don't know, try to get something different. But can you see how that's just not sticking on the sides of that jar? Yeah, it just runs down. And I'll show you both of the jars here in just a minute. So I'm going to leave that, let it dry. And you can see I did coat that original one with a little bit of Mod Podge on the inside to try to get it frosty looking, and that was kind of neat. But that second one, like I said, I let the alcohol ink sit on it, left it on its side like that, and just rolled it every hour or 2 and left it to dry forever and ever and ever. Alright, so I'm taking this dandelion fluff I collected, and I've got this bigger one with these big seeds, as well as a little bit of little ones. And I'm just putting that in the jar to represent spider webs. To me, that looks a lot like a spider web, and I think it kind of works. And I'm going to put it in both jars because I kind of wanted to see with that darker jar if it was going to obscure the spidery web stuff too much. So, and I was using that Q-tip, but I decided that I was afraid too much of the fiber was going to get caught in it. So I'm just going to use a little bamboo skewer to help just push these in there. And so neither one of them, because the stuff is so silky and clear to an extent, it doesn't show up super great in either one of these jars. So I'll end up using that darker jar just because I like the faded and distorted kind of coloring of it. It kind of, I felt like, went into that broken, torn kind of thing that Ina asked us to use. Now I'm using the margin of a dictionary page. I like the coloring of this that was kind of yellowed, and I'm cutting out the words beware spider webs in here, and I'll cut the spider webs into two little things and stack all of them together, and just use, I think, just a popsicle stick comes with the rub-ons, or what are they called, remnant rubs. So I'm going to peel off that white backing portion and put it down on my paper, and then just rub it with that popsicle stick, and then peel up the acetate that it was secured on. And I'll do that for all three words. And I'll do it carefully. I had a little bit of trouble. I think maybe it was with this one that it was trying to take some of the paper with it, and I had to just kind of work it off a little bit. Now this works out because both the stuff I'm putting in the jar looks like spider webs, and so I kind of want it to feel like a witch's apothecary kind of jar, potion jar, that kind of thing. But also the term beware spider webs. Y'all, seriously, have you ever walked through a big spider web in the woods? It is one of the spookiest, scariest things. And for me, that's so arachnophobic. Yeah, y'all, I beware those spider webs because they will make me scream. More than, somebody chasing me with the chainsaw probably would. That, oh, is not fun. All right, so I've got those words down, and I'm going to tear kind of around it, especially that bottom edge. I don't want that straight edge on there. So this is the ripping and tearing again, which is kind of fits in with one of Ina's prompts. And so I've got that down, and I'm just making sure it's about the size I need. And I'm going to coat the top of it with a little bit of Mod Podge just to make sure those letters stick on to that paper really well, that they're not going to peel off with some of the things I do here in a bit. So the next thing I'm going to do is start on the idea of soldering my jar, and I wanted to create, because I'm going to put some copper tape on top of it, I don't want the stuff on the inside sticking to that tape, so I'm just cutting a little circle that's the same size or a little bit smaller than the jar lid, or that opening, and I'm using more of that dictionary paper, that since it was on my desk. I might have used maybe something a little bit thicker, some cardstock or something would probably have been better. And then I've got this just reinforcer because it is sticky, to make sure that that paper sticks on there without getting, I don't know, everything else sticking. And that adds a little more bulk to it as well. So I've pulled out some copper foil tape, and I am going to kind of make just an X on the top of the jar to make sure that that paper is covered. And then I will go around the outside rim of it. But once I get my X down, I'm going to take, I'm going to take that popsicle stick, because it's sitting there, and just rub it. This is called burnishing, and so I'm burnishing down my copper tape to make sure it is stuck to my jar very well before I solder it. So like I said, I've got my X on there, and then I'm going to take a little bit more of that copper tape and just go around the outside rim, making sure it's on that outer edge as well as poking up over the top. And I'm trying to line up all my edges, and then I will fold down, and my edges weren't lined up there, so I'm going to reposition that just a little bit. And it's hard to go back once you solder this, to go back and fix it, so it's better to fix it while you're at this stage. So I'm pressing that all down, and then I'm going to burnish it. I'll both use the popsicle stick, and that red tool that's over there is a burnishing tool. Yeah. And again, I'm just trying to make sure all of the pokey portions of that tape, because this is a metal tape, are down and that everything is stuck really well. I over burnish things to an extent. And now it's solder time. So I have my lead-free solder. My soldering iron is heated up, and I've got this is a gel flux. They're liquid and gel fluxes. I just used the gel because it was the first thing I ever bought. And I am coating all of my copper tape with the flux. This just helps the solder flow onto your copper tape. And I got a little bit of the solder onto my soldering iron, and I'm spreading it over the top and the sides. Now, normally, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I should not be holding that jar. A lot of things when you're working with solder, the items themselves will heat up and get too hot. So I was working very quickly before that jar heated up, because glass will conduct that heat. So I'm getting all of that copper tape covered and pushing it aside, and then I pulled out a little bit of copper wire. This is 20 gauge copper wire that I bent into an arc, and I put the flux on the ends of that wire. And this is gonna be hard for y'all to see. I'm sorry about that. And where the ends are, I'm fiddling with it to make sure I get it just the way I want it. And I'll get some of my solder and use my soldering iron to stick one side on there, and then I'm gonna turn it, and my arc wasn't exactly perfect, so I'm trying to fix that a little bit with my pliers to get that other side to touch the side of my jar. So I think I end up, my fingers do the best thing. And then I'm sticking the other side. Again, all of this has been coated in flux. And then I'm going to make sure that is on there really well, because this is going to be the charm of my necklace. And I want to make sure that is a super secure attachment. And then I coat the rest of that copper wire with some more flux, and then just tin the wire, which means I put a little bit of that solder over that wire, just so that everything's the same color. And then I do a little bit of a decorative accent where get a glob of solder and just kind of dot it onto that where the copper tape was, where it's soldered. Just so it has these neat little bumps. All right, and I knew I wanted to darken this, so I'm using a bit of Novocaine black for patina. For solder. It's a patina, and it darkens this, and I'm using a grungy brush working on top of a paper towel that I keep the brush on, and y'all, I have just darkened that up using that. Now, again, I should probably be using gloves or something, but I do this all the time, and I encourage you to use gloves and protect yourself. And I will say that while I solder, I had the window open, and I was wearing a respirator to keep those solder fumes out of my lungs. All right, so I've got this darkened pretty well. I'm removing the excess patina, and then grabbed some 00, what do you call that, steel wool, just to buff back some of the darkening and have a little bit of the metally color coming through. That's because I knew I was going to use like some metal colored wire in there, and I wanted it to kind of have the same kind of coloring. So this just brushes back that patina a little bit. And I realized there was a little bit more of that Novocaine black on there. And once I got the color I wanted, I'm using Johnson's Paste Wax to seal my color in. This just makes sure that the metal itself is protected and that the patina doesn't wear down as fast back to the silver. And so this is one of those things you apply, let it sit for a second, and you buff off. And y'all, I'm just using old t-shirts, just ones that got holes in them or fallen apart, and I cut them down into rags that work great for this. All right, so that's all done. And it's time to stick my label on. I didn't want to stick my label on before that because I only had so many of those remnant rubs, and I didn't want it to get messed up while soldering and all that. So I picked the darker portion of my jar is where I'm going to put down my little tag. But first, I'm inking up the edges with Distress Ink and tea dye. I did that real quick. I'm going to grab a water brush to see if I can get that to blend a little bit. It doesn't really, no, it didn't really do anything. I didn't really get enough ink on there, but I tried. So again, I'm using the Mod Podge. I'm trying to make sure there's no water left on there. Put that straight onto my jar, and then I am bending my label on there and coating it once again. And I didn't get a whole lot of the Mod Podge over the top of it because I knew that the next thing I was going to come in with is that texture paste, that clear crackle texture paste. And this again is going to be, I've ripped that page. I've done a lot of things to kind of cover Ina's ripped, torn, crackled prompt, but I wanted to actually put some crackle in here, so I'm using this clear crackle over the top of my label. I know I go ahead and put it over like portions of the jar as well, but it doesn't really add anything. The jar is clear, the crackle's clear. It's never going to show up. So I'm going to leave that to sit for a while. It does best when it air dries. And to accentuate the crackles, I'm using some transparent, it's either, do I have it? It's on my desk. Let me see. Transparent raw umber Liquitex acrylic ink. And I put a little water in there, and I'm trying to get that into the cracks of this crackle. Now the water in this, it works okay, but I end up getting some more of that ink without the water in it, and it does a little bit better to show those crackles. Now with crackle paste, the thicker you put it on, the bigger the cracks, and the thinner you put it on, the smaller the cracks. So I knew that when I was putting that on there. And so I can see here that I'm not getting I'm getting some of the crackles, but not all of them. So here's where I'm like, I'm just going to use the ink on its own without watering it down. And that almost immediately worked better. So pro tip there, I suppose. And I am blotting off the excess and not adding water to it because I don't want to pull it back anymore. And y'all, I love, love, love how this label turned out. So the last thing for me to do is pull my necklace together, and I'm just using jump rings. I'm putting just one between my crescent moon charm and my jar, and then I'll put two at the top, a smaller one and then a larger one that will connect to the chain of my necklace. Now you can see I've already got two portions of chain. There are two beads at the front of each of those portions. And so once I put my second jump ring on this pendant here, I will just connect the chain. Now jump rings, these come already opened, but to open and close jump rings, remember that you are going to twist them open and close. I do have a tutorial on that. I'll put it in the upper right here about doing jump rings, but I just slid my chain into that larger jump ring each side and then closed it. And now to add a clasp, I'm putting a jump ring on and my clasp and twisting the jump ring closed. And on the other side, I'm just going to add a larger jump ring. And that's it, y'all. I have this amazing necklace. I encourage you to go to check out what Ina does. She'll probably have it out at the beginning of November when she announces the November challenge. Let me know if you have any questions about any of this. I appreciate you coming by and watching. This was a lot of fun, a little bit more fun than I thought. As scared as I was of that spider prompt, but I think I made it work. I hope you think I did too. All right. Thanks y'all for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see y'all later. Bye.